Motion controls. We don't tend to think about them a lot. Sure, they have their place, but most people prefer traditional control schemes, maybe only using gyroscopic input every now and then for more pinpoint aiming when needed, but there was a time when motion controls were all the rage, and it was all sparked by this thing, the Wiimote, Wii Remote, whatever you want to call it. It's not at all like your typical controller, and yet it would lead the Wii to dominating the 7th generation of consoles sales-wise. One notable aspect to the console was its pack-in title, Wii Sports, a sports simulation game made to showcase the new hardware, which came included with every system. Unless you got it in Japan, apparently. This served not just to give you something to play with when you bring home your new gaming system, but as a sort of introduction to this new method of control. After all, everyone has a basic idea of how a sport's played, so there's a pretty good baseline there. Before we can play this thing, we of course have to go over to the Mii channel to make a Mii, an avatar to represent us, or anyone you want, really. You want to make a Mii of Elizabeth Holmes, go for it. You want to recreate the likeness of 42nd Governor of Alabama, Big Jim Folsom, you can do it. The only limit is your imagination, and the customization menu itself. Now, sure, at the time, this worked, but man, they really overhauled the customization on later consoles, so coming back to the Wii, it's pretty easy to feel constrained here. Alright, we've got our dude, let's play this thing. It never gets old, does it? So we've got 5 sports lined up and ready to play. Now in each sport, you have a skill level that will change going up or down based on your performance. At skill level 1000, you become a pro in that sport, giving you a smug sense of superiority. What, you're not a pro in Wii Sports Bowling? Can you please not breathe in my presence? Thanks. In tennis, baseball, and boxing, you have to compete with other computer-controlled Miis, and as your skill level increases, you'll face new ones who gradually become harder to compete with until you confront the champion. Alright, let's play this thing. Of the adversarial sports on offer, tennis is the best of the bunch. It's exclusively duos with no option for single matches. You can play alongside an AI teammate, but it's better to directly control both characters. You can play a single game or best of 3 or 5. The rules here are largely the same as actual tennis. A ball is served over the net, and both sides hit the ball to each other until one side misses it or it goes out of bounds. This goes on until one side gets enough points to win the game. The key is being able to position your 2 players to cover your side while messing up the formation of your opponents, allowing you to hit a ball through a vulnerable spot. However, you don't actually have much control over your characters as they move on their own. The player just has to focus on hitting the ball back and forth, which of course you do by actually swinging the Wii Remote. It doesn't differentiate the position of the Wii Remote to adjust to backhand or forehand swings, nor does it for overarm or underarm shots. Although it can detect when you change the angle of your wrist, letting you add a spin to your shot. It's interesting to compare this to something like Switch Sports, a game that came out much later down the line. While Switch Sports feels a little more loose, in its version of tennis, it feels like the matches go by a lot quicker compared to Wii Sports, which feels slower and more methodical. Rallies can go on for quite a while, and it gets more and more tense as you're trying to look for an opening in your opponent's defenses, and we kinda like that, honestly. Tennis is definitely one of the better options Wii Sports has to offer. The controls are simple but effective, and there's not much to the gameplay, but the reactive nature of it is quite addicting. Up next is baseball, America's favorite sport. Here, teams alternate between batting and fielding. When batting, you've gotta try and hit the ball as far as you can, hitting into the outfield to try and score bases. Unlike real baseball where there's strategy and stuff, this is a weird version of it where when a fielder picks up a ball, they hold it up and bow their heads to the baseball gods who determine how many bases you get to run. The goal is to have your guys run around all 4 bases, increasing your score when they run across home plate. There's just something funny about the way those little beans hop over that final base. In order to score good hits, you need to smash that ball at just the right spot at just the right angle. You only have so much time to analyze your pitch, so a quick eye and reflexes are necessary. You want to avoid hitting into the infield or making pop flies, which make it easy for your opponent to out you. Getting 3 outs means you change sides. When you're fielding, you pitch balls over to the batter. Pitching is simple enough. A simple swing of the Wii Remote is all that's needed. But by pressing different buttons on the Wii Remote, you can make different types of pitches. Fastballs, screwballs, curveballs, splitters. The goal is to get the batter to miss the ball 3 times, striking them out.
Strike. Batter out.
If they do manage a hit, you just kind of have to hope that your fielders can take care of it. Now, the key here is to change up your pitching patterns. Keep the batter on their toes so that This goes on for 3 innings. Whoever scores the most at the end wins. Baseball is probably among our least favorite of the sports. The motion controls are good, batting does feel nice, especially when you can connect it to the ball just right. It's just that there's not a lot of action here. The only things you can do is bat and pitch, swinging at balls hoping to score a home run, and pitching the balls hoping to dish a strikeout. There's just not a lot to do here. On the plus side, they really went out of their way to make it feel like an authentic baseball game. You've got the announcer,
Play ball.
the sponsor signs, and the little baseball organ when you score a run.
Triple.
So, you know, that's pretty cool. Moving on to bowling. This is one of 2 games where there's no computer opponent to compete against, so you're playing by yourself. Anyways, you roll a ball down the lane, and you try to knock down these 10 pins for these 10 frames, trying to get the highest score. Despite being a simple game, you're given quite a bit of control. You can move your character and rotate them, then you swing your arm back and forward to release the ball. It never gets old. Releasing the ball early makes a more powerful throw and increases the spin, while doing it late allows you to target specific pins with more accuracy. More notable, by rotating the controller, you can add a spin to the ball into the direction it was turned. It feels very close to bowling, just with a really, really light ball. Trying to manipulate the Wii remote to hit those pins and racking up those points is quite delightful. And I can appreciate that they tried to replicate a bowling alley of some sort, but good god, it looks like some sort of purgatory. It's just something about the lack of color or objects, and we never actually see where the series of bowling lanes end. It feels like we're in the middle of just an endless void of alleys. Are we sinners? Have we done wrong? Is this our torment? I think we should move on to the next sport. Golf, like bowling, has no opponent to play against if you're playing solo. You use a golf club to try and hit this golf ball into a hole in as few shots as possible. While golf is simple, there are a few mechanics you'll need to pay attention to. You have these different clubs to choose from, with each being able to hit the ball to varying distances. You have a power gauge with notches that correlates to a line on the map. You use the Wii remote to mimic an actual golf club, raising and swinging it just like in real life. How fast you swing your Wii remote actually translates into the game. The harder you swing the Wii remote, the further the ball will travel. But if you swing too hard, the ball will veer off course. Landing on the fairway is all well and good, but places like the rough will limit your distance, so obviously you'll want to avoid those. You'll also need to account and correct for wind, which will blow your balls off course if you're not careful. The motion controls are solid here. Swinging feels nice and intuitive, plus you never have to worry about blundering and completely missing the ball like in real golf. I'm not very good at real golf. The courses themselves, of which there are 9 in total, get progressively more difficult, and offer good challenges. You'll hit over rivers, through a narrow, wavy strip of land, and even to other islands in the water. I know I'm looking too far into this, but this seems like a real hassle to play on. I mean, you'd have to boat over to these islands every time you hit over to them, then there's the matter of somehow getting onto the island because they're all surrounded by cliffs. You need a really big boat or a ladder or something. Boxing is the only sport that calls for the use of the nunchuck, which of course is this thing. It's got a joystick and some buttons, but the only thing that matters is that we can use it to punch. Of all the sports, this one is probably the most complex in regards to control. So obviously you punch in game by punching in real life. If you hold the Wii remotes up, you'll aim towards the face. If you hold them down, you'll punch towards the body. To defend yourself from your opponent, you block your head by similarly holding the Wii remotes up, and you block your body by holding them down. To move, you tilt both the Wii remote and nunchucks, which lets you dodge from left to right. And this is where things get interesting. See, the Wii can't really detect the specific position of your Wiimote and nunchuck, so you can't punch where you want to punch by simply punching where you want to punch. Instead, you have to tilt the Wii remote and nunchuck to manipulate your Mii's movement, which will then line up your punches to where you want them to go. And there's utilization of different punches as well. You can swing the Wii remote upwards for an uppercut, or swing your remote in an arc to the left or right to perform a hook. Wait a second, my opponent's a woman? Is this fair? Both you and your opponent have a life gauge that must be whittled down. When this happens, you fall to the floor and a countdown begins. They may or may not get up. If they do, the match continues, albeit they'll have less health, so easier to knock out. If they don't, well, then you win. If neither side is KO'd in 3 rounds, the winner is determined based on who fought the best over those rounds. You know, recently I've been thinking that maybe I should get in on boxing. I'd be a great referee. Boxing is a pretty interesting sport, although it's brought down by its motion controls. Once the matches begin to up in intensity, you really begin to feel the jank. Punches thrown when you didn't intend them to be thrown, or punches not being thrown when you did. So all in all, Wii Sports Boxing is 25% actual gameplay and 75% waving your hands around randomly because neither you or the game has any idea of what you're doing. What, we're both wearing glasses? Well, that doesn't seem very safe. Clearly, boxing is a little too ambitious for the hardware, but it does recreate the intensity of the real deal, and I'll give credit to the atmosphere. The way the crowd slowly fills up as you face tougher opponents is a nice touch. That slow motion when you narrowly dodge a punch, and the lighting makes it feel pretty cinematic. I feel like I should be quoting Rocky right now.
Let me tell you something you already know. This cutaway gag ain't funny.
So those are all the sports. Tennis is probably the Jedevision favorite because it's a solid, competitive, addicting sport that's easy to pick up and it works as well as it needs to. Golf, then bowling for their more laid-back approach and simple but intuitive showcasing of the motion controls. Baseball in 4th place because it's just kind of boring. And boxing in dead last because good Lord. There's also a training mode. Each of the sports has 3 little mini games that help you learn and master the mechanics. Tennis's modes put reflexes and timing front and center, helping you return the ball and direct it. In baseball, you're lining up the bat with the pitch to score good hits. The bowling modes help you aim your throws and manage your spin. Golf challenges you to make your shots more precise in different wind conditions and terrain. And boxing helps you learn the more in-depth mechanics of dodging and punching. There's even a daily fitness test that you can do, where you're given 3 randomized training mini games to play, and the game will calculate your speed, stamina, and balance based on your performance and records, and records your progress over the course of days. Some real supercomputer stuff going on there. Of course, all 5 sports have multiplayer, so you can play with your friends if you want. I mean, we didn't, but if you have someone to play with, you can. To its credit, this is actually a pretty easy game to pick up and play in general, so if you have even the faintest idea of how these sports are played, you're pretty much set. Finally, there's just something to say about the music. It is an iconic OST. The game's title screen opens the game strong and hooks you before you've even played a single sport. The main menu sounds global, as if it were to be broadcast on television, and each of the sports even has their own tunes and renditions of the game's theme. Which gives them their own unique character and charm. Wii Sports is a pretty solid game. The motion controls feel naturally implemented, they recreate the general feel of the sports they're aiming to emulate, and truly do make everything more engaging and immersive. If there's anything negative you could say about Wii Sports, it's that it's probably not a game you'll be playing for a particularly long time. On paper, there's a fair bit of content, for a pack-in title anyways, and if you really wanted to master the game, you probably would be playing it for a while. But for most people, they're probably not looking to do that. And the sports, while fun, don't have a lot to them. Eventually the novelty of, oh my god, I feel like I'm playing tennis, it kind of fades. Once you've picked up some more games, Wii Sports is probably not a game you'll be coming back to. Yet, while the simplicity is perhaps Wii Sports' biggest drawback, it's also why it works so well. Sure, a couple of these sports could have had some more complexity baked into them. Tennis could have allowed you to use the nunchuck to move your player around. Baseball could have let the players have more control over base runners and field players. Maybe players could even allocate stats to their Miis for an extra layer of intricacy. But the Wii, and by extension Wii Sports, was clearly targeting a casual demographic. People who very well may have never picked up a controller before. In a proper sports game where you have to consider all these different mechanics and controls would probably be confusing to people like that. By streamlining gameplay, it's a lot easier for anyone to just pick it up and play, to engage with and enjoy the motion controls and just appreciate the feeling of playing a sport. I'm sure this simplification might alienate the core gamers who want a little more meat on them bones, but the sales don't lie. Now, before we end this video off, it's worth talking about a game that everyone knows and loves. Wii Sports Club! Yeah, I lied to you. It's misdirection. Go to film school, they'll tell you all about it. Wii Sports Club is an HD remake made for the Wii U, and it does a few things. Graphics have of course been updated, it uses Wii Motion Plus so it can track more complex motion, the sports added a few mechanics, and most notably it had online play, and even Miiverse functionality, although both are long dead. Wii Sports Club has a very odd story regarding its existence. For one, it didn't release as a physical product. It would debut on the Nintendo eShop for America on November 2013, with a pretty weird way to purchase its contents. There was somewhat of a demo where you had unrestricted access to the game for 24 hours, after which you had to cough up some cash and you had to buy each sport individually for $10 each, which mind you, it initially released with only tennis and bowling. Golf would release a month later, then baseball and boxing would release on June of 2014, 8 months after its release. The more things change, the more things stay the same. Alternatively, you could get a day pass giving you unrestricted access to all the sports for 24 hours for just $2. Although obviously once that time limit's up, you have to buy it again. Yeah, it's a pretty weird setup, although it was honestly on par for a lot of what Nintendo was doing at the time. They were doing all sorts of experimental things to sell their stuff. Well, here's an experiment you can run. How about you just sell me a game? No gimmicks, no catch, just let me buy a game. Wii Sports Club wouldn't even get a physical release until July 11th, 2014. According to the late Satoru Iwata, the reason for releasing the game on disc was to increase sales potential. Well, I'd think you'd be doing it because that's how you're supposed to make video games. You put them on a disc. When it comes to Wii U titles, this is surprisingly one of the harder ones to secure these days unless you're willing to pay a premium. A physical copy was hard to find even when they were being sold, and since you can't buy it off the eShop since that's shut down, your options to procure this game are pretty limited. But we've got ourselves a copy, so let's go clubbing. Before we talk about the games, I want to first bring up the graphics. Credit where it's due, it looks sharp, with more detail and depth, and we especially like how there's more characteristics within environments. The tennis court feels more substantial. It looks like a place for some professional tennis playing, and the worn out ground, where the players trample on the most, is a nice touch. Bowling has some more stuff in it to entertain the eye. Terminals for keeping score, vending machines, a reception area. These make it feel like an actual bowling alley and not a passing intermediate state after physical death for purifying a soul. And boxing has these coaches to hype you up in between rounds. However, in comparison to its predecessor, the colors feel a lot more dialed back and restrained, making it look quite dull in comparison to Wii Sports' more colorful and vibrant look. The menu also feels basic and bland in comparison to the original, and for some reason, they switched out the skill graph for an experience bar. Lame. Alright, let's actually review the sports themselves. How do they fare with the new and improved controls? Once again, we'll review tennis first, and of all the games, this one probably benefits the most from the refined motion controls. Instead of only tracking when you swing, it now actively follows your Wii remote. You can move it around, tilt it, and alternate between front hand and back hand. While gameplay is more or less the same, it does feel more loose and less limited than its predecessor, and you feel like you have a lot more freedom to control the ball. So tennis gives some pretty good first impressions, and some high hopes for the next few sports. Unfortunately, it's all downhill from here. Bowling isn't bad, to be honest. You can feel a little bit of a difference in the motion controls, but it's not significant, and it plays pretty much the same as normal Wii Sports. Well, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Moving on to baseball, batting feels smoother, but in a way that makes it feel more stiff, which we don't like, but it's whatever, because other than that, it's identical to Wii Sports. Defense is where things get interesting. You now use the gamepad to aim your pitch. Honestly, we like this. It feels like a natural, not so intrusive implementation of the controller, and while some might say it doesn't do a good job of replicating the feeling of throwing a ball, we wouldn't say that the Wiimote did much better in that regard, so it's whatever. There's also this thing where if the batter hits a pop fly, the point of view changes to one of the outfielders, and you have to aim the gamepad at the ball as it flies towards you to catch it. It's not really that hard to do, and it's kind of unnecessary. While the new gamepad controls breathe a little more life into baseball, it's not enough to completely revitalize it. It still plays more or less the same, the gameplay is limited, and there's still not a lot to do here. Golf is the other game to implement the Wii U gamepad, but unlike baseball, it's not implemented implemented very well. Basically, it shows the golf ball on the ground, and you're supposed to put the controller on the floor. It's a pretty neat idea. The problem is that it's totally pointless. We thought that maybe the camera on the gamepad would track the Wii Remote's pointer or something, but no, it's purely just for immersion purposes. You could throw the gamepad across the room and it wouldn't make a difference. The swinging sensitivity also appears to have been reduced, so you have to swing harder to fill up the gauge, which we don't really like. Something else that's weird is that the game now takes into account the rotation of the Wii Remote when you swing it. If you tilt it, it'll hit the ball at a different angle. And I'm genuinely not sure if this is supposed to be a mechanic that gives the player more control of the game or if it's added challenge, because all this ever does is mess you up. Because you think about it, when you're swinging the controller, chances are the orientation of it is gonna change as it goes down. So it's something you're constantly having to worry about. I mean, seriously, what's the point? Why have this as a mechanic when I could just move my character in-game, unless you are just deliberately trying to screw the player over? Well, at least here you have 3 courses to choose from the classic Wii Sports, the one from Wii Sports Resorts, and Club's original courses. And you can play 2 of them back to back for an 18-hole game. Alright, we're on the last sport here, boxing. This one's interesting because it doesn't use the nunchuck. You have the option of using a single Wii Motion Plus controller or dual wielding them. Now, playing with one is doable, but not preferable. Seriously, I feel like I'm an amputee right now. The idea of playing with 2 Wii remotes is really interesting, and you'd think that this would massively improve the gameplay, but not really. Compared to its predecessor, it all feels stiff and restrained, just not really exciting to play. It's just something to do with how the punches fly in this smooth, straight line. It's just too perfect and clean.
Now hold on just a minute. Why am I fighting somebody's grandma? Once again, there are some training modes as well, although only a few of them feel truly new. Most are just copied from the original with some small adjustments and additions.
With all the sports done, it's worth noting that you have stamps. These are basically the game's achievement system, carried over from Wii Sports Resort. Why is there a scroll wheel to display more sports? There's only 5 of them, so those are all the sports that Wii Sports Club has to offer, and overall, it fails to impress. Only tennis feels as though it was sufficiently reworked to feel new and improved. The other ones are either just not really changed enough to feel significantly overhauled, or in some cases, just straight up worse. You play a lot of these sports, and it's not very fun because you've more or less played them before on the original Wii Sports. You're essentially just replaying slightly tweaked versions of them, which is quite boring. Maybe the 24-hour pass was a good idea, because you're probably not going to be playing it for long. Why pay $50 for the lot when you can suck up all the enjoyment from the game for a paltry $2? And it's a shame because the online mode seems pretty interesting. Wii Sports Club had an online mode where you could directly compete against other players from around the world. We can't comment on how good the online mode was. We've heard some mixed things about it. One of the big complaints were for bowling and golf, where you and your opponents actually had to take turns stepping up, which slowed down the gameplay drastically. Other than that, there were supposedly just a lot of connectivity issues in general. Regardless of the quality of the online experience, it had a pretty interesting thing going on. Basically, you could join these things called clubs. These clubs related to your country or region. Right now, I'm in the Wisconsin Club, which as you all know is the best state in the Union. The idea was you'd sign up and represent your little group, and your performance would contribute to a spot on an online leaderboard. It's an interesting idea and a pretty neat way to build a community around the game. Maybe this is a hindsight thing, but building this community to execute this concept requires some pretty dedicated players willing to devote themselves to the game. There's just not much reason to get invested and take your club to the top because it's so easy to drain this game of its entertainment value. Even if the sports were good, there's only 5 of them, so there's just not enough mileage here. So it's a good idea, but sadly, one that couldn't reach its full potential. To end things off, this game had Miiverse functionality, Nintendo's attempt to create a social media platform around its gaming console. Back in this game's heyday, you can make these Miiverse posts and drawings to communicate with other players during online gameplay, and the gamepad would display Miiverse posts made by other players on the game's page. It's a pretty small aspect of the game, but honestly, it's kind of charming. At the time, there was just something about getting to read these posts that other players make about the game that makes you feel like you're a part of something. The whole Miiverse functionality gets a lot weirder when you know the lore. Every game on the Wii U had its own community on Miiverse that you could post to, and with this specific game, every single specific club had its own community. These communities were as dead as Wii Sports Club itself, but at some point, Miiverse users would form these gangs, and I guess their version of territory were Miiverse communities, and the Wii Sports Club communities were the primary battlegrounds. Miiverse was truly a bizarre place in the time it was active, so honestly, gang warfare, why not? So that is Wii Sports and Wii Sports Club. Wii Sports for us gets a 7 out of 10. If you look at it like a game like any other, it's a simple, solid little thing with a good amount of content to tide you over. From an objective standpoint, it wouldn't rank among the greatest games in the world, but from a more sentimental point of view, it definitely earns a spot in gaming history. It's not what it was, but what it did. It was an effective pack-in title that sold the console and paved the way for motion controls to be a legitimate thing in the industry. And for that, it is a respectable title. Wii Sports Club sucks. Well, not necessarily. Wii Sports Club honestly isn't a bad game if you separate it from Wii Sports. If you gave Wii Sports Club to someone who never experienced the original, they'd probably have an alright time. It is basically just Wii Sports with new graphics, tweaked controls, and online play. With that in mind, it gets a 6.5 out of 10. The main problem is that it just doesn't do anything. Wii Sports, while simple in its execution, had the benefit of being a pack-in title and breaking new ground for motion controls. Club is just dead in the water. It's a standalone title that doesn't do anything. Obviously they were trying to carry on the legacy to this new console, but it's a pointless game overall. It's not offensively bad, just offensively bland. So that wraps up this episode of Jedevision Special Reserve. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. And I'll see you in the next one.